Okay, so as you've heard, I want to set out to establish the truth of these two statements. Number one, the single underlying root cause of our ecological collapse is believing and enacting human supremacy. Number two, organized Christianity is an enabler and a full participant in enacting human supremacy. Is everybody here okay? These two statements are pretty bold, and statements that you might expect from an expert or an academician or a scholar or something, and I want to be sure that you understand that I am not one of those. And when I decided to say that, what came to me is the fact that I would not be comfortable presenting this to any group besides you guys. I think you pretty much accept me as I am. And if I were to go off the deep end and make a fool of myself, that you probably would be fairly gentle with me. By the same token, if I were to say something that was important and worthwhile, you could hear it from me. That's the definition of a safe group, and I thank you for being a safe group so that I can take some risks. I came across the idea of human supremacy in the blogs and writings of Tom Murphy, who's a retired professor of astrophysics from UC San Diego. It was probably 2 or 3 years ago, so my journey has been a rather long journey. In addition to his blogs, Ishmael, the story of My Ishmael, books by Daniel Quinn, Derek Jensen's The Myth of Human Supremacy, and some of the writings of Thomas Berry have been my most influential sources. What I plan to do with this first statement is to start with what life was like before human supremacy was a part of society, what human supremacy is, and then what has happened since. So, looking at a timeline of Earth, life on Earth, as a perspective, I think we all know that the Big Bang, or the Great Flaring Forth, occurred about 14 billion years ago. The Earth was formed 4.5 billion years ago. First life appeared 3.8 billion years ago. The first humans 2.5 to 3 million years ago. And Homo sapiens, our form of humanity, 250 to 300,000 years have been here. The human supremacy has been present for about 10,000 years. So a little about life before the 10,000 years of human supremacy. Actually, there's no written word of human life during those times because writing didn't occur until about 5,000 years ago. So when the human story began to be written, there was no knowledge of anything preceding the 5,000 years to record about humans because the knowledge about humans could not be passed generation to generation orally over that long a period of time. So basically when the human story... It's all right, thanks. When the human story began to be written, there was no knowledge about those previous years, and the story was was essentially that humanity began at the same time that writing began. And still, the recording of the human history, very often, this period is called prehistory, and it's assumed that nobody knows anything about it. Daniel Quinn, author of Ishmael and so forth, has called this the Great Forgetting. But through paleontology and archaeology, we've learned since that humanity lived in reciprocity and balance under the same rules as all the other millions of species during those early times. Actually, just being present for 250,000 years indicates that humanity's evolution was successful and that human life worked. And what does it mean to say that human life worked? It's kind of a complicated question, but it really means talking about evolution. All species, of course, are evolving all the time. And basically, it can be said that a species persists as long as the way it is living works. And it works as long as a species has found a place in nature to live and lives in balance with the rest of life in that place. And then evolves in a way that allows it to give and to take in equal amounts continuously, then allows it to continue to live in that place. Remember that the process of evolution operates in time periods of millions or even billions of years, time periods that we humans have a very difficult time processing and understanding and appreciating. So before the advent of human supremacy, there were these 7 or 8 or maybe 10 million species living on this globe, floating in space, functioning basically as a single unit. I'm sure that, I should say that there were 1 or 2 species per million that went extinct each year. I'm sure you're all aware of the Gaia hypothesis that says that the Earth is a single living planetary organism, that all life forms are considered to be a part, but it's the Earth that functions as a single unit. And each species is present to the planet, in Thomas Berry's words, in a mutually beneficial manner. So this 10,000 years, of course, is hardly a blink of the eye in evolutionary time. And I should point out that human supremacy is not a policy. It's not something that was established by a powerful person, by a powerful organization or a political entity. It resulted from people's experiences and their own thoughts about living on Earth. And eventually it became, actually in a fairly short period of time, became an unquestioned belief, which Derek Jensen points out are the kinds of beliefs that are they're really the powerful beliefs in any kind of culture. They're the ones with the most authority. And I should say that because it became that unquestioned belief, it has persisted through all these years. It has required nothing to keep it going because it's just a part of the culture. Something that we've all learned, something that we've all just lived in. We don't have any choice about it. And I should say that all human cultures did not adapt to human supremacy. There are a few of those left in the world, scattered in various places, still living in the way they were living or growing from the way they were living before. And of course, they have essentially no influence on us in the supremacist culture. So, what is human supremacy? What do I mean when I say that? The best explanation I've found describes human supremacy as a worldview. It understands humans to be the pinnacle of evolution, superior to all life that has preceded us. The earth and all that is in it is intended for us humans to use in whatever way we see fit. We have control of it. We are in charge. It is ours. The importance of all other life derives entirely from its usefulness to humans. We've become a society of humans functioning as though we are separate from nature, rather than a society of humans functioning within nature. We consider ourselves the final authority. We are not responsible to any other form of life. We don't intentionally participate with or feel any obligation or responsibility to the community of non-human life on Earth. We are responsible only to ourselves. As evidence based on our own experience and observation that we are living in lives mostly for ourselves, we can look at the four basic establishments that are said to be determining human life in its more significant ways: government, university, religious traditions, and commercial industrial corporations. When you look at the activity of those four establishments, what we see is that all of the activity is meant to benefit only humans. We don't see activity that is meant to benefit, or it is even adapted to fit other beings in nature. In reality, of course, we are in nature. We are a part of nature. We were created by nature. And we are in mutually dependent relationships to other human beings or other beings in nature. We didn't choose it to be that way. That's just the way it is with life on Earth. All life operates in relation to other life. And to go a little further with that, our very presence on Earth is determined by the Earth itself, by nature, by the universe, if you will. It's not us, it's not humanity that decides whether we are here or not. It is not God, unless you equate God with evolution or consider that God is acting through evolution. Because whether or for how long any species continues on Earth is determined by evolution. And it is that fact that makes it clear that evolution has something to say about the way we're supposed to live. I don't think it's necessary to describe in detail the results of our human beings living for ourselves, but Daniel Quinn has one of his characters being a person who gives public lectures, and one of the lectures describes at least Quinn's feeling about all of this that I want to read. It's not going to be too long. What's more, and you must mark this, the things that got us here were good things. In 1950, there wasn't the slightest whisper of doubt about this anywhere in our culture, East or West, capitalist or communist. In 1950, this was something everyone could agree on. Exploiting the world was our God-given right. The world was created for us to exploit. Exploiting the world actually improved it. There was no limit to what we could do. Cut as much down as you like, dig up as much as you like, scrape away the forests, fill in the wetlands, dam the rivers, dump poisons anywhere you want, as much as you want. None of this was regarded as wicked or dangerous. The earth was created specifically to be used in this way. It was a limitless, indestructible place for humans. You simply didn't have to consider the possibility of running out of something or of damaging something. The earth was designed to take any punishment, absorb and sweeten any toxin in any quantity. The world was made for man, and man was made to conquer and rule it. This is what God created us to do. I have a hard time reading those words with that tone. That's a pretty severe admonishment. So reading that and understanding that makes it pretty clear to say that we are destroying the planet and that human extinction is on the horizon. That statement is not an exaggeration. So I consider that those words establish the truth of the first statement. Of course, what to do about it lurks in the background immediately. I've done my best to avoid that, and I recommend you do the same thing. Not immediately ask, okay, what do we do? But try to let that sink in and try to let it be in our consciousness, in our bones, as the saying goes. And in time, there will be some kind of way. I already have a couple ideas for my own life, but it's important that this be an accepted fact rather than an intellectual admonishment. So let's go to the second statement. And I would contend that we don't need theologians and philosophers and scholars and academics and smart people to establish the truth of that statement. We need only to look at our own experience. I'd point out, first of all, that our scriptures, both Hebrew and New Testament, were written during a time when human supremacy had already been the dominant worldview for 5,000 years. And as Daniel Quinn has one of his characters saying, please don't imagine this is something we learned from Genesis. This is something we knew before Jerusalem. This isn't something that the authors of Genesis taught us. This is something we taught them. When scriptures were written, the knowledge of the universe was minimal compared to all that we know now. And in particular, the universe was considered to have been created in its completed form. Though it had renewing capacity, it was a stable, unchanging creation with a three-layered world understood to be at its center. Sun rotated around the earth. There was no knowledge of evolution. All of the writing in the scriptures obviously conforms to that knowledge of the universe. And now preachers theologians have to interpret those scriptures in the light of this hugely expanded knowledge of the universe. And especially, how do the scriptures relate to the knowledge that the human species will live on earth only as long as it lives to the benefit of the universe as well as to itself? So there are questions about scriptures in this. When it comes to scripture specific to human supremacy itself, we don't need to go beyond Genesis, do we? And let them rule over the fish in the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, over all the creatures that move along the ground. And a few verses later, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over every living creature that moves on the ground. Subdue and rule over are words that fit supremacy perfectly well. Though there are references in Scripture to the non-living elements of the earth, mountains and desert, wilderness, so forth, when looking for references to the non-human living residents in the world, only a few can be found. And when found, what's written does not in any way suggest that non-human life is equivalent in value or importance to human life. It's very clear that the important, almost exclusive subjects of our scriptures are relationships, human to God, human to human. Now remember, human supremacy had been the dominant worldview for some 5,000 years at the time our scriptures were written. So perhaps it's not surprising that their subjects are human relationships. Regardless of what scriptures have intended, organized Christianity has been, still is, a full participant in the worldview of human supremacy, with no resistance to it, no offers of alternatives. We can all say that, because that's what we've experienced. And I think that establishes the truth of the second statement. One way forward that I have found comes from scholars who have said that we're living an old story, and we need to find our new story. And I like that idea. I have that's kind of the end. And I have wondered whether I should say anything about how this has all affected me. And up until this moment, I've decided I would not do that, but I'm going to do it. These ideas are in my bones now, after this period of time. And I think about this all the time. And the idea that the Jesus I've said I want to follow and the God described in the scriptures that lead the church in which I worship have no significant relationship with anything other than our relationships with each other and with God. That leaves me with a discontinuity, a hole in my spiritual life. My spiritual experiences now are incomplete. Sermons are incomplete because they never consider this other hugely important part of my life. And so one of the things that I have to do is to see whether I can find a way that Christian ideas will fill that hole and make my religious experiences, spiritual experiences more complete. And also to look at other forms of spirituality. But all of it seems so big and so complicated. The fact that we don't read about this or hear about this in ordinary works about climate or about the way we are living. And I wonder what have I missed? What information is there that this is not correct and that we need to adapt? We need to accept and adapt and begin to change our lives. If we don't change our lives, it's very clear that we're going to be extinct. You know, we've got to change. We no longer can feel as though we are in charge. We have to live in a way that supports the universe, the whole, and that means we have to be in cooperation. We have to live the way, not in the exact way, but with the same rules, if you will, as were lived by before the worldview of human supremacy took over. So I spent a lot of my time being very uncomfortable and wondering. I'm a great fan of next steps, you know, and this is my first next step to present this to you folks. And I have some ideas about next steps, but I'm not spending any great time on them. So we can discuss now, and I have two requests. One is that you don't say anything at all if you don't have a microphone in front of you. We have to honor those that are here, and myself, who have hearing problems. What's the other request? I've forgotten. That's the only request. So we have several people who have microphones that have been tested. So who wants to start with a comment? I'm very happy for people to disagree with what I've said or to wonder what I've said.
I've got a microphone.
All right, go.
I've got a microphone and it's on, I think.
Hold it very close. Very close.
Okay. I totally agree with your premises that we do have this human supremacy syndrome thing going on and have for all time. And when we first thought of it, maybe it was because of a survival of the fittest kind of thing, or, you know, competition for food or resources or something like that. But now it's just getting ridiculous, and now we're just taking it away from other species or whatever. But I do not have as much problem with Scripture not addressing our relationship. I look at church and the Bible and as instruction on how to treat each other, not necessarily how to treat ourselves outside. And I think that's because I'm grounded in my relationship with nature, and that brings me a spirituality and an understanding of my place in the universe, because I've spent so much time outside, grown up outside, lived outside. And, you know, like if you're in the bottom of the Grand Canyon for 3 weeks, you kind of get an idea of your place in the universe, which is pretty damn small when there's a whole universe of things out there. And so I can't see so I can empathize with, you know, if we're trying to build a mind that's going to take out a whole species of the last plant on Earth that can live in that area, I'm way bummed by it. And I'll do what I can within my job right now to fight for that right of that plant to exist. And, you know, you didn't use the word extinction too much, except in relative to us, but there have been several major extinctions over time, but we are hastening at an extraordinary level species extinction. You used to say there were like 1 or 2 a year for the last bazillion years, but now it's like a lot. So
it's 1,000 to 10,000 times more common.
Yeah.
It used to be 1 or 2 species per million.
Yeah.
Now they measure in days. You know, 300 a day. Yeah. It's the beginning of the 6th mass extinction.
Right.
Sorry.
And I just can't. It's just got to turn around, and we're not going to be preventing things. We're too far well, but if we can change our mindsets and our institutions. Now, I used to think that government had a place in that with Fish and Wildlife Service or somebody who's trying to do something, but they're like recreating wetlands and stuff, and you really can't recreate what God has put there in the first place, I don't think. So, I don't know. My faith in my institutions has really gone under, but my faith in myself and where I want to go, what I want to work for, has not changed. And I don't know. Thank you for your talk. Who's next?
I'd like to respond just very, very briefly to that. It's fine that you have a relationship with nature that makes you less concerned about the Bible not having that and so forth. We have to talk about the culture, not just you.
Yeah.
So the task is, the change that's needed is the whole culture having what you have. Next.
I guess I would like to say that I agree with you 100% that the culture we live in has this attitude of superiority. But I guess I have a hope is that there are other cultures that have survived. We have suppressed them, but they have not completely gone away, who have an alternative point of view. For example, the indigenous people of North America. They have a different origin story, and it's very much oriented towards all of life has supported us, and so it's important that we have this reciprocalness with the other living beings, including plants. And so you can have an alternative culture that encourages each individual human being to see this way we get along with the rest of the world. So there are examples of that, and somehow we've got to go from this culture that we grew up in, which is extremely human-centered, to one that sees that we're just we're actually getting along together. My private theory is that what's happened, you have these other cultures that have survived up until very, very recently, and their secret was they nurtured the environment in which they lived. We, the Europeans, and basically the inheritors of this Judeo-Christian culture, we have by war managed to dominate these, and the question is whether, if that all falls apart, will human beings again evolve in relationship to the surviving pieces of the environment and get back to a more balanced thing. I think that perhaps there was, this is completely my own theory, is that the people who were in North America at the time that the Europeans invaded, they'd had their oops. They did in the megafauna, and they realized, oh, we have to live in harmony and nurture everything, all other living things in order to survive. And they did survive all the way up until a few hundred years ago. So that's it.
I want to, somebody else, I'll say what I want to say first, and somebody else can say. I want to challenge your word nurture. Nurture is almost hierarchical. I know that's not your thing, but the word to use is participation. We need to participate with the rest of life in nature and on earth, not as an overseer, not as a nurturer. Go ahead.
Well, that isn't the meaning I meant. what exposure I've had to that other culture is that nurture is something that everybody, all living things do. The plants nurture us. They give us food. The animals nurture us. They give it their lives. You know, so there's a mutuality. It isn't just us. It's all living things nurture each other. That's the
So
which I have.
you're using nurture in a different way than I use nurture. So I retract all that I said. Who else? Yes, sir.
Well, it's a little kind of a coincidence. This morning, I wanted to be here on time to hear my older brother talk about this. But there was a service this morning, a gathering, community gathering at Fairfax Community Church, which happens to be an earth-centered congregation, very small. We were a very small group of people came. And I am not seeking any longer a community on a regular basis. Having been raised and left my Catholicism, and then for 35 years or 40 years or so, was a very active member of my Jewish congregation, having converted. And around the time that I met my older brother here, Royce, I was getting involved in being concerned about climate warming, which was my first awareness of the destruction that Royce is talking about. And through the years together, in our involvement in a climate action group, the naivete started to disintegrate, and we became more aware of the greater destruction that was being caused by the way we live and what we do and how we act toward the earth. And anyway, I began to see things in my own traditions, both traditions that I've been part of, that were not addressing my disconnect that I didn't know I even had because of what Royce is talking about. I was raised to celebrate as a Catholic, very close, as a Christian, and then to celebrate as a Jew. And Tikkun Olam was caring for the earth. But the focus was always human. It was always on us, l'chaim, good to live. And then seeing, and more recently, how l'chaim in one way means to live, and on the other hand, with the left hand we live, and the right hand we destroy in the wars that we have committed and all that. But I want to say that a couple years ago we did have an event here which you participated in, and Project Adapt had various, we had your photographs from Standing Rock, and we had a get together out there by the big redwood tree, a relationship to the redwood tree. So that was my preface, because this morning I went to this church. I have a problem because my wife does not want to really participate with me. So anyway, I don't want to get too involved, but it was about service for to honor the earth. It was about earth, okay, earth-centeredness. And what we did is that we went outside, and by this church, if you know the Fairfax Community Church, I never really got to connect with it. I never knew. There was this grandmother oak tree. I say grandmother because she's been there probably 500 years old. And I must say that being and with that oak tree and having a prayer with it, putting some tobacco into the tree, honoring it, I felt the wisdom of that tree more than I can feel that I'll ever have that as much human wisdom. And I think that, for me, is what my response to Royce about what he's talking about, is that somehow it's so ingrained with us, our human supremacy, our disconnect, how different we are from the rest of the nature, that we don't even, that somehow we have to find some ways to become aware of that understanding that we've taken, that's sort of there, that drives us our awareness about human supremacy. I mean, I would disagree. I don't like to call it that, because I have to experience my relationship. I have to experience that I am just one of many other species, and that's what I felt was so apropos this morning. I was coming to this, and I had this experience of really being with this great-grandmother tree. I just wanted to share that.
I think that what Pat has said is something that, well, I could say it this way. Clearly, one of my next steps is to try to develop my relationship with nature. And I think if more of us had a relationship like Pat has developed with nature, where he feels like he belongs, he hears things, he experiences things, he has a spiritual relationship that's there, he's a part of it. And that can happen to all of us if we go about it intentionally. And for me, that's a clear next step. Yes, sir.
Okay. Royce, I'm not offering a solution to the problem, but I would just like to bring up the important point that there are actually two types of evolution that have taken place. And part of the problem with our idea of human supremacy evolves from cultural evolution. And I've just been thinking about this, and maybe perhaps there is an opportunity to shape our cultural evolution. Because what I'm afraid of is that if we don't do that, that cultural evolution and biological evolution are going to collide. And that's what we're seeing, is a collision between the two forms of evolution. And what will win out, of course, because it's the driving force for the whole universe, is what I'm calling biological, although it's not simply biological, but that form of evolution. So I'm not arguing anything with what you're talking about. I'm just adding a further understanding of where the problem came from originally, was from the human cultural evolution, and perhaps, well, okay.
Does cultural revolution have anything to do with the possibility of extinction?
I suppose so. Yeah.
How? Can you say how?
Well, again, I think that the extinction of a culture would come about through the collision between the biological evolution and cultural evolution. And in that book, Collapse, he talks about that a lot, where that climatic or environmental collapse caused then the collapse of the culture. So I haven't been thinking about that in particular, but I just wanted to bring up the fact that our idea of human supremacy comes about through this parallel form of evolution that is taking place.
Yeah.
And perhaps, we were talking just a few minutes ago about different cultures, and so perhaps other cultures, their evolutionary process, their cultural evolutionary process has been such that it is not so human-centered. I don't know.
Cultural evolution is not something I've looked at all. That's a very interesting new subject for me. Next. Oh, John, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. As you were talking, Royce, I was thinking about, human evolution and how when we're born, and anybody who has kids knows that right around 2 years old, there's what they call the terrible twos. And it's me, I. And I remember my son is here, I don't want to embarrass him, but I remember this phrase that he said to me, he said, "You're not the boss of me." Yeah. You're not the boss of me. And I think that's where we are as a species in terms of our relationship with God. We've gained some technological prowess, and while we recognize God, I think our attitude is, "You're not the boss of me." And I do believe that we are under the illusion of separation. Our Western reductionistic scientific paradigm puts everything in a box. And I believe we put God in a box as well. And if God is the all that is, and we're all part of the all that is, we're a reflection of our Creator, then it's hubris to think that there's not life beyond this planet, that we are it, with the millions and trillions and billions of planets that we know of in the cosmos. That there aren't life forms that are more intelligent than us and have been through this evolutionary process. And I believe it's becoming more clear, and we're hearing more about this in the news, and people are having more experiences of life beyond this planet, and that we are all connected not only to each other, but through all life, because everything is alive in God. And if there is life beyond this planet, we are connected to that life. And what we do not only affects what goes on this planet, but throughout the cosmos. We are all connected. And I would have to say, what gives me hope is that there's a paradigm shift that's underway. And I think it's exemplified by quantum physics, the new physics. And Scott mentioned in his sermon the word entanglement, that we're entangled. And I would say we are entangled with all life throughout the universe. And I think quantum physics is bringing light to that and hopefully shifting this paradigm so that not only do we think about this stuff, but we will know it. And I think because the planet, just like our bodies are these biofeedback mechanisms, we are going to continue to get more and more feedback. I remember I shared an article, with the group where these professors were saying that unlike other species that gets feedback very quickly, we've developed to a level where our technology delays that feedback. But it's coming, and we're experiencing it more and more. And that's going to hopefully help us to change our ways.
Thank you, thank you. And we're going to stop at 12. You've got 4 minutes. Can you say it in 4 minutes?
Hopefully. Well, thank you for pointing out that we all thought in 1950 that we could just keep on doing what we were doing, and also how the Bible was human supremacist, and I'm thinking, oh, and so was Plato, and basically everything that was written. But I'm thinking, well, you know, in 1950 we really didn't know better. We didn't have the information that we have now, and with information does come the possibility of doing something different. Doing something different is pretty hard, as we're finding out. And so I'm kind of hopeful. And yesterday I was thinking about how I love bees, or at least bees in theory. I don't like getting stung. And I thought, you know, bees are, pollinators are diminishing, and maybe I should think about donating to the Xerxes Society, which is trying to help out insects. And that hadn't occurred to me before. So, you know, I think there's possibility of progress. Anyhow.
Great, thank you, thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Royce, and I love the book, The Myth of Human Supremacy by Jensen. I recommend it to everybody. I would be curled up in a ball, totally depressed, if I didn't think I could try to do something. And we all live in this country, and when we live in this country, we're part of the biggest military-industrial complex. War and our support of war as taxpayers is doing more to drive climate change than many, many other things. And just a little pitch, when we vote for even Green Democrats, if they don't push back on the budget for the Pentagon, they are not being very green, and we're just all part of the problem. I have some literature about a congressperson running, Rose Penelope Yee. I'm not going to pass it out and force it on anybody. Ask me for it, I'll give it to you. People, Peace, and Planet is what she's running on. If we don't stop being part of the war, the genocides going on, in other words, if we don't start stopping being part of a system where other human beings are determined to be superior to other human beings, we're not going to do anything about, how we treat other creatures on the world. So thank you for everything you've said. I'm just so overpowered with emotion, and for me, I go back to what Robin said about what the community and what this church can do for me. What I get out of it is love, and if we can't love each other and love our enemy and love each other as we would love ourselves, to me, I don't know what else we can do. So thank you, Royce, and I really appreciate everything you do to get us together.
So they all lived happily ever after the end.